Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
You know what's wild? 24 hours can completely change everything for a baseball franchise. 1 minute, you're convinced you're landing the superstar that transforms your lineup. The next, you're watching him put on a different uniform while your homegrown all-star packs his bags for a division rival. That's exactly what just happened to the Toronto Blue Jays, and honestly, the fallout is more complicated than anyone wants to admit. Kyle Tucker chose the Dodgers. That stung. But then Bo Bichette, the guy Toronto drafted and developed, the shortstop who was supposed to be part of the core alongside Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for years to come, he signed with the Mets. 3 years, $126 million. No deferred money, so that's a clean $42 million average annual value. The contract includes opt-outs after both the first and second seasons, which tells you everything about how these deals work now. Players want flexibility, teams want commitment, and somebody's going to end up disappointed. ESPN broke the Bichette news on January 16th, pending a physical, of course, and you could almost feel the collective groan from Blue Jays fans who've already endured enough heartbreak this winter. Because here's the thing, Toronto actually had a pretty aggressive offseason. They didn't sit back and count pennies. They went out and spent money, real money, more than any other team actually. We're talking $337 million in total commitments across 4 major free agent signings, with Dylan Cease headlining that group. So this isn't about a franchise being cheap or unwilling to compete. Something else is happening here. Mike Wilner, who covers the Blue Jays for the Toronto Star, jumped on foul territory on January 16th and laid out what should happen next. He's convinced the move is obvious. Cody Bellinger, the outfielder who just spent time with the Cubs and Yankees, who's proven he can handle the AL East, who brings elite defense to a team that clearly values that skill. Wilner pointed out that Bellinger makes sense precisely because Toronto was so focused on Tucker, and if they were willing to make that fit work, Bellinger shouldn't be any more complicated. Think about it. Bellinger has demonstrated he can perform in the pressure cooker that is the AL East. He's not just a bat, he's a legitimate defender in the outfield, arguably better defensively than Tucker. For a Blue Jays team that seems obsessed with improving their defense, that matters. Sure, it might seem like an odd pivot, but according to Wilner, the Tucker pursuit was equally odd, and they were prepared to make it happen anyway. So why not redirect that energy toward Bellinger? The alternative isn't pretty. Wilner mentioned Nathan Lukes, who's been an average major league hitter at best. Yes, he led off in a World Series game and scored the winning run, but that's more about opportunity than sustained excellence. Then there's Joey Loperfido, who had an incredible 6-week stretch after getting called up last July. Maybe he gets a shot. Maybe he develops into something, but if you're the Blue Jays and you've been throwing your weight around in free agency like you're ready to contend right now, settling for maybes and what-ifs doesn't align with that aggressive posture. That's Wilner's point. If Toronto is acting like a bully in the free agency market, going after the Kyle Tuckers of the world, then Cody Bellinger absolutely should be within reach. It's not a consolation prize, it's a legitimate plan B that potentially addresses the same needs Tucker would have filled while bringing different strengths to the table. But let's talk about why Tucker didn't happen, because that's revealing. Ken Rosenthal, one of the most connected insiders in baseball, appeared on Foul Territory on January 15th and shared some insight that makes you rethink the entire narrative. According to Rosenthal, it's not necessarily that Tucker looked at Toronto and said no thanks. The issue might be that Tucker simply didn't want to go long-term anywhere. The Blue Jays were reportedly willing to offer him a lengthy contract, the kind of security most players dream about. But Tucker wanted something different. He wanted short-term with opt-outs, which is exactly what he got from the Dodgers. 4 years with opt-outs after years 2 and 3. That structure tells you Tucker believes in himself to either get hurt and want the security, or more likely to perform well enough that he can opt out and get an even bigger deal when he's still in his prime. It's a bet on himself. And maybe, just maybe, Toronto wasn't his preferred destination regardless of term length. Rosenthal acknowledged that the Blue Jays have become much more attractive as a free agent destination than they were in recent years. Every player they've missed out on this offseason had specific circumstances. It's not always about the market or the country or any of the usual narratives people lean on. Free agents do want to go to Toronto. The spending proves that. The signings they've made prove that. But it doesn't mean every free agent wants to go there, and it definitely doesn't mean every player wants to commit long-term there. Tucker's case seems to be about contract structure and personal preference more than anything else. That's just how it goes sometimes. You can do everything right and still not land your target because their priorities don't align with what you're offering. So where does this leave the Blue Jays? They've got Guerrero Jr., who's entering a contract year and needs protection in the lineup. They've got an expensive pitching staff after adding Cease. They've invested heavily this winter but don't have the marquee bats to show for it yet. Bellinger makes sense as the next move because he checks multiple boxes. He's a switch hitter with power potential. He can play multiple outfield positions at a high level. He's experienced playoff baseball. He knows what it takes to win in October, having been part of a World Series champion in Los Angeles earlier in his career. The question is whether Toronto can actually close that deal and whether Bellinger sees them as the right fit. If he does, this offseason suddenly looks very different. You'd have Guerrero, a revamped pitching staff, and an outfielder who can anchor the defense while contributing offensively. That's a competitive team. If he doesn't, then Toronto is stuck trying to convince themselves that internal options are enough, which feels like a tough sell after spending the way they have. Baseball's funny like that. You can spend more than everyone else and still feel like you're scrambling. You can make all the right moves on paper and watch players choose different paths. The Blue Jays are learning that lesson in real time, and the next few weeks will determine whether this aggressive approach pays off or becomes another chapter in a longer story of almost but not quite. Bellinger might be the answer, or he might be another name on the list of guys who went somewhere else. Either way, Toronto's stuck in that uncomfortable space between ambition and execution, and that's where championships are either built or dreams fall apart.